right, so you're thinking about getting into index funds. Smart move.
Yeah.
Planning for the long haul, I see. Well, today we're doing a deep dive with Dmitry Uralov.
Oh, yeah, you're a love.
He's a financial expert on YouTube. And what I think is really cool about his take is that,
Yeah, what about his take?
well, he doesn't just like blindly praise index funds,
Right, right.
like so many other financial gurus out there.
Yeah, yeah. They're all like, index funds are the holy grail. But is it really that simple?
He actually looks at like both sides of the coin.
I like that. Balanced perspective. Always good.
Yeah, gives us like a way more balanced view, don't you think?
Totally. And isn't that what we're all about here, right? Getting the full picture, not just the hype.
Exactly. But before we get into that whole debate,
Yeah, let's lay some groundwork.
let's make sure everyone's on the same page.
Level set.
So could you maybe give us a quick rundown of what index funds actually are, for anyone who's new to the game?
Yeah, totally. So index funds, in the simplest terms, are basically like a pre-assembled basket of stocks.
Okay, a basket of stocks.
They're designed to mirror a specific market index.
Gotcha.
Like one of the most popular examples is the S&P 500.
Okay, yeah, the S&P 500. I've heard of that one.
Right. So that tracks 500 of the largest publicly traded companies in the U.S.
So instead of trying to pick individual stocks, which, let's be honest, it's pretty hard to consistently pick winners.
Oh, tell me about it.
Index funds kind of give you a way to spread your investment across a whole bunch of companies, right?
Precisely. Diversification, my friend. It's like the golden rule of investing. And with index funds, you're basically getting instant diversification.
Without needing to be like a stock market wizard.
Exactly. No crystal ball required.
Oh.
And Uralov points out some pretty compelling advantages to this approach.
Advantages, okay.
He actually calls them his big three.
Oh, big three.
Ah.
I'm intrigued now. Let's hear it. What's number one on the list?
Number one, cost effectiveness.
Okay, cost effectiveness, yeah. That's always a good thing.
Right. So index funds typically have much lower fees compared to those actively managed funds.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. With an index fund, you're not paying a whole team of analysts to constantly research and buy and sell stocks, all in an attempt to beat the market.
Oh, I see. So you're cutting out all those extra costs.
Exactly. You're cutting out the middleman and all the fees that come with them. Uralov really drives this point home, by the way.
How so?
Well, he points out that actively managed funds can sometimes charge up to 3% in fees.
3%. Ouch.
Yeah. And those fees, well, they can really eat into your returns over time. Think of it like paying a hefty commission on every trade you make.
Yeah, that would definitely add up over the years. All right, so we've got lower fees. That's a big plus. What's the second big advantage?
Number two on Uralov's list is removing emotion from the equation.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Because, as we all know, investing can be an emotional roller coaster. The ups, the downs, the uncertainty. And often those emotions, well, they lead us to make bad decisions.
Oh, believe me, I know that feeling. Remember that time I panicked and sold off all my tech stocks?
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't my finest hour.
Yeah, we've all been there. But with index funds, you're essentially automating the process.
Automating?
Yeah, so you're not constantly checking the market or making impulsive moves based on fear or greed. You're just riding the long-term wave, not trying to time every little peak and trough. It's a much more disciplined approach.
So less stress, more discipline? I'm liking this. What's that third advantage Uralov talks about?
This one's a bit more philosophical. He calls it a focus shift.
A focus shift.
Basically, Uralov argues that when you know your money is consistently invested in index funds, it frees up your mental energy.
I can see that. You're not constantly worrying about individual stocks or market swings.
Exactly. And instead of, obsessing over your portfolio every day, you can focus on other important aspects of your life.
Like maybe actually earning more money to invest or spending more time with family and friends.
Exactly. And it's not just a subjective feeling either. Uralov points to research from Vanguard, the investment firm.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
They're very reputable. And their studies suggest that a lot of investors actually lose money in actively managed funds, even when the fund itself performs well.
Really? Even when the fund is doing well, how is that possible?
Well, you guessed it. Emotional reactions. Panic selling, buying high out of FOMO, that kind of thing.
So it's not just about how the market performs, but about how we behave as investors.
Right. Our own psychology can sabotage our returns, and index funds can actually help us avoid that trap. They encourage us to stay the course, stay disciplined, and think long-term.
I like it. Less emotion, more logic. So far, index funds are sounding pretty good.
Right. But now we're getting to the good stuff. Because despite all these compelling advantages, Yurilov also has some pretty serious reservations about index funds.
Oh, reservations. Okay, now I'm really interested. What are these doubts he has, and why should we be paying attention to them?
Well, his first concern is what he calls blind faith in the market.
Blind faith. Okay, that sounds a little ominous.
Yeah, so index funds operate under this assumption that the market will always go up in the long run, right?
Right, that's kind of the whole premise, isn't it?
But your love cautions that, we live in a world that's changing so rapidly, and those historical market patterns, they might not hold true in the future.
So he's saying those past trends, they might not be a reliable predictor of future performance.
Exactly. We can't just assume that things will always keep going up.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Does he give any specific examples to illustrate this concern?
He does. He actually points to current market conditions as an example.
Okay, interesting. What does he say about the current market?
Well, he suggests that many assets, particularly in the American market, might actually be overvalued right now.
Overvalued. So what does that mean for index fund investors?
Well, it means there's a potential risk of buying high and then, potentially losing out if the market takes a downturn.
Oof, I see. So it's not all sunshine and roses with index funds, even though they have those big advantages.
Right. And that brings us to his second doubt, which is closely related to this whole buying high thing.
Okay, I'm listening. What's this second doubt?
He calls it buying high and buying everything.
Buying everything. What does that mean?
Well, remember how we talked about how index funds buy all the stocks in a given index?
Right, to get that diversification.
Exactly. But the problem, as Yurilov sees it, is that this means you're inevitably buying some assets that are overvalued, which could, potentially drag down your overall returns.
I see. You're buying the good with the bad, basically.
Precisely. And he uses this really clever analogy to illustrate this point. He compares a market index to a quesito.
A casito. What's that?
It's Spanish for a small cheese wedge.
Oh, okay. So how does a cheese wedge relate to index funds?
Well, imagine the quesito is like the S&P 500, right? And each slice of the quesito represents a different company in that index.
Okay, I'm visualizing it.
So some slices, like maybe the ones representing those big tech giants, they might be huge because their market value is so high.
Right, because they have a large market capitalization.
Exactly. But then you've got other slices that are tiny, representing companies with smaller market caps.
So when you buy an index fund that tracks the S&P 500, you're essentially buying the whole cheese wedge.
Yeah.
With all those different side slices.
Exactly. You're buying everything, regardless of whether each individual company is a good deal or not.
And the problem is you might be overpaying for those giant slices, those companies that are already overvalued, right?
Right. And those overvalued companies could end up dragging down your overall returns, even if the index as a whole is performing well.
Wow. Okay, food for thought, literally. So two big doubts down. Blind faith in the market and
Right.
buying high and buying everything. Is there a third one?
There is, and it's a little more philosophical.
Okay, lay it on me.
So while Yurilov acknowledges that the simplicity of index funds is a major plus, they're easy to understand, easy to manage.
Right, set it and forget it, as they say.
Exactly. But he believes that diving deeper into investment strategies can actually be more fulfilling and potentially more profitable in the long run.
Oh, interesting. So he sees index funds as maybe a bit too passive, like they might make investors complacent.
Yeah, there's a risk of that. He worries that people who rely solely on index funds might miss out on opportunities to really learn about the market, to grow their wealth in a more active way and to kind of develop a deeper understanding of how things work. It's like, are you the kind of person who enjoys the journey or just wants to get to the destination? You know what I mean?
That's a great point. It really makes you think about what kind of investor you want to be, right?
Hmm.
Do you want to be more hands-on, or are you okay with taking that more passive approach?
Exactly. And there's no shame in either approach, by the way. It's all about finding what works for you.
Totally. I mean, honestly, I kind of like the idea of being more hands-on with my investments, at least to a certain degree. Like really understanding what I'm putting my money into and why. But I get a little nervous thinking about making those big decisions on my own. Like, what if I mess it up?
Oh, yeah, I totally get that. It can be intimidating. And it's easy to get overwhelmed by all the information out there. The market's constantly fluctuating. There's always new trends and strategies popping up.
Right, exactly. It's information overload.
And that's one of the things that Eurolove really emphasizes. Even if you do decide to go the index fund route, it's still crucial to educate yourself, understand the basics of investing, have a clear financial plan. Don't just blindly throw money at something because someone on the internet told you to.
That's such good advice. I think sometimes people forget that even with index funds, you still need to do your due diligence.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to his point about emotional biases. He says that even experienced investors can fall prey to those, fear, greed, impatience, all that stuff.
Oh, believe me, I've been there. Remember when I panic sold all my tech stocks?
We've all made those kinds of mistakes. It's part of the learning process. But the key is to recognize those emotional triggers and try to develop strategies to avoid them.
So it's not necessarily that index funds are bad. It's more about understanding the potential pitfalls, right? Like knowing that they might not always be the perfect solution, depending on your individual circumstances and your investing style.
Exactly. It's all about fitting the tool to the job, right?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So as we're trying to figure out whether index funds are right for us, what are some key questions we should be asking ourselves? Like, what guidance can we offer our listeners as they're navigating this decision?
Well, I think the first crucial step is to honestly assess your risk tolerance. How comfortable are you with the ups and downs of the market? If you're someone who tends to panic during those dips, index funds might actually be a really good fit. They can help you stay the course, avoid those impulsive decisions.
Right. Sometimes it's better to just ride out the storm, even if it feels a little scary. But what if you are comfortable with a little more risk?
Well, then you might want to consider other options that give you more control and flexibility. But here's another important factor to consider: your time commitment.
Time commitment. Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, are you actually willing to dedicate, several hours each week to researching individual stocks, analyzing market trends, all that stuff?
Because managing your own investments, it's practically a full-time job.
It can be, especially if you're trying to actively pick stocks and time the market.
So if you're not willing to put in the time, index funds might be the more practical option.
Exactly. It's about setting realistic expectations. And finally, I think it's crucial to think about personal growth as an investor. Do you want to develop a deep understanding of the market, or are you content with a more passive approach?
Yeah, that reminds me of something Eurolov said in his video, how index funds can sometimes lead to complacency. Like you just kind of set it and forget it, and you never really engage with your investments on a deeper level.
Right, exactly. And for some people, that's totally fine. But for others, it might feel like a missed opportunity to really learn and grow.
So ultimately, it comes down to personal preference.
Mm.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Absolutely. The important thing is to be honest with yourself about your preferred investment style, your risk tolerance, and your level of commitment.
And to always, always do your research. Don't just follow the crowd or blindly trust what you see online.
Well said. And I think Eurolove would agree with that wholeheartedly.
So it sounds like the big takeaway here is for investors to really reflect on their own individual needs and goals.
Hmm.
Like what kind of investor do you want to be? What are you hoping to achieve?
Exactly. And once you have a clear understanding of that, you can start to explore the different options available and find the approach that best aligns with your vision.
Makes sense. But I have to ask, if index funds aren't always the perfect fit, what are some of the alternatives? Does Eurolov offer any insights into other investment strategies?
He does, and that's something we'll be diving into in the final part of our deep dive. He touches on a few alternative approaches that might resonate with investors who are, looking for a more active and engaging investment experience.
Now I'm really intrigued. Can't wait to hear what other wisdom Eurolov has to share.
Stay tuned for the exciting conclusion of our index fund deep dive, where we'll uncover Eurolov's insights into alternative investment strategies and how to find the approach that best aligns with your unique financial journey.
All right, welcome back. So we've talked about the pros and cons of index funds with Eurolov, and now I'm really curious to hear what alternatives he suggests, for those investors who are looking for something a little more hands-on.
Yeah, the more active investor. Well, it's important to note that Eurolov doesn't actually endorse any specific alternative to index funds.
Oh, okay, so he's not like, here's the magic formula, go do this instead.
Right. He's more focused on encouraging us to, think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
To consider different options that might align better with our individual goals and values.
That makes sense. It's about finding what works for you, not just blindly following someone else's advice. But What are some of the hints he drops about these alternative paths? Like, what kind of investor is he speaking to here?
Well, he seems to be talking to those investors who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get a little more involved with their investments, the folks who are eager to learn and actively participate in growing their wealth.
Okay, so not the set it and forget it crowd. This is for people who are ready to put in the time and effort.
Exactly. And one of the key themes he emphasizes is this idea of aligning your investments with your personal values. He believes that this deeper connection, it can lead to both greater financial rewards and a sense of fulfillment.
I really like that idea. It's not just about chasing the highest returns. It's about investing in a way that feels meaningful and aligned with your beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. Purposeful investing. And this kind of leads him to touch on the idea of investing in small businesses. He sees it as a way to potentially generate strong returns, but also as a way to make a tangible impact on your community and the economy as a whole.
That makes a lot of sense, especially coming from Earlov, who's, an entrepreneur himself.
Yeah.
He's clearly passionate about supporting small businesses.
Right. And he argues that investing in small businesses can actually be an incredible learning experience in itself. It forces you to develop a deeper understanding of business fundamentals, market dynamics, and how to evaluate opportunities.
You're not just passively investing in a big company that's already established. You're actually getting involved in something that's, growing and evolving.
Right. It's about being part of that journey, not just the spectator.
So it sounds like he sees this as the opposite of that, set it and forget it mentality that can sometimes come with index fund investing.
Exactly. It's about taking ownership and being an active participant in your financial journey. And honestly, I think that's something we can all apply to our lives, even outside of investing.
That's a great point. It's about being engaged, being informed, and taking control of our own destinies, right?
Exactly.
This has been incredibly insightful. I have to admit, Eurolov's perspective has really made me think about my own investment approach. It's so easy to get caught up in the hype surrounding index funds, but he reminds us that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
And that's one of the most valuable takeaways from his perspective, I think. He challenges us to question assumptions, explore different viewpoints, and make informed decisions that align with our unique circumstances and goals.
So whether we're leaning towards index funds, small business investments, or something else entirely, the key is to be intentional and informed.
Absolutely. And to never stop learning. The financial world is constantly changing, so continuous learning is essential for long-term success, no matter what path you choose.
Well said. Your love has given us a lot to think about. As we wrap up this deep dive, is there one final thought-provoking question we can leave our listeners with? Something to really get them thinking about their own financial journeys.
Let me see. Okay, how about this? Eurolov really emphasizes the importance of finding investments that resonate with you on a personal level, right? Things that align with your values and passions. So I'd challenge you to ask yourself, if you could invest in anything that truly reflected who you are and what you believe in, what would it be?
That's a great question. It really forces you to think beyond just the financial aspect of investing. It's about finding those opportunities that not only have the potential to grow your wealth, but also bring you a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into index funds and beyond. Remember, the key is to keep learning, stay curious, and make informed decisions that align with your unique financial goals and values.